episode 144 of the podcast. This week we'll talk about holistic grooming and cooperative care. Why do groomers and trainers use different terms to describe this? In the second part, we'll talk about the idea that comforting reinforces fear. You're listening to the Creating Great Grooming Dogs podcast. I'm Chrissy Newmeyer-Smith. I'm a certified professional groomer, a certified behavior consultant for canines, a certified professional dog trainer, and the owner of Happy Critters in Nashua, New Hampshire. And this, my friends and colleagues, is the podcast where grooming and training meet. The grooming industry tends to use the term holistic grooming when we talk about adding training or minimizing fear and anxiety. But what does holistic mean? So there's a philosophical definition, but I'm going to use the medical definition because I think that speaks more to what we do. The medical definition is characterized by the treatment of the whole person, taking into account mental and social factors rather than just the symptoms of a disease. Now, what it means for the grooming process is that we're trying to look at the whole dog. It's more than just how to get grooming done. Why is this dog having a hard time? What can I do to help this dog have a better experience? In my opinion, and I'll tell you that it's just my opinion based on my experiences, a holistic approach is the way to go. And it's why I've added training and behavior principles to my grooming. It's why I do this podcast and why I try to relate grooming and training together and integrate the two. Looking at the whole dog. We look at their medical issues, their grooming needs, their fears, their phobias, their experience levels. All of those things are working toward a dog who is calm, comfortable, and cooperative. We want a dog who can handle all of the things that we need them to do. And a dog who can handle it is better prepared for future grooming or vet visits or home care. Now, I know I'm much heavier on the grooming angle, but that's where this podcast really started, is teaching groomers about behavior and teaching trainers about grooming. But this is all sorts of physical care. This is not just grooming care. This is the veterinarian. This is the owners at home. If we look at the whole dog, we get a chance to really get a feel for what it is they are experiencing beyond just what we are trying to do. So that's the holistic point of view. Now, my worry is that for so many people, the word holistic makes them think about new agey stuff. And they're just not ready or willing to buy into new agey stuff. And all right, I'm a new agey granola crunchy person, but I also need to be able to express behavior principles to people who simply aren't, because there are so many people out there who need to hear the same message from a scientific angle. So what is the scientific version of holistic grooming? If you are worried that holistic seems too wishy-washy and you're worried that we're all pulling out the essential oils and the crystals, which I have nothing against, just that I know there are plenty of people out there who can never be on board with that. But if we're looking at the whole dog from a more scientific point of view, I would say that we should be looking at the cooperative care version, which is what the training industry calls looking at the whole dog when we're trying to do grooming, vet visits, and other types of care. The International Association of Animal Behavior Consultants had a pretty good definition. That's the IAABC, if you are interested in any of that. They say cooperative care involves training an animal to not only tolerate handling and husbandry procedures, but to be an active, willing participant in these experiences. That's a pretty powerful term, isn't it? That's pretty cool. So I know that sometimes groomers can't be ready to hear either of these. The idea that the dog will cooperate with us can feel far-fetched. I used to be there. I remember feeling like there is no way this dog is ever going to cooperate with us. If only they had learned as a puppy, or this dog is ruined now, he had a bad experience. But time and time again, when you observe that dogs can learn, when you observe that they can learn to be better, and sometimes it's a leap of faith. Sometimes you just have to say, you know what? I keep hearing that you can teach a dog to not be afraid of this, and by golly, I'm going to give it a try. But the idea that a dog will cooperate for us can really feel far-fetched. And that's why a lot of groomers don't necessarily go for it. or vets or home care, the owner at home, like, oh yeah, he just hates it when people touch his feet, and but why do we just think that's forever? Now, when we think about what's going on behavior-wise, what is happening between the dog's ears, we can create a plan to help that dog. We can try to help them overcome their issues. Are they afraid? What are they afraid of? Are they overstimulated? What are they overstimulated by? What can I do about that? Are they way too silly? What can I do to calm them down? Each of those would be different reasons for the dog to have difficulty in the grooming setting or in the veterinary setting, or even just with owners trying to brush them. So cooperative care isn't a particular method. What I like about the term cooperative care is it's an outcome. It's a bit of a philosophy. It's the goal. At the end of the process, the completed, finished behavior would be a dog who is active and willing participant in their own care. This could be done using a variety of techniques. So cooperative care doesn't mean I have to use cookies, or I have to use nose targeting, or I have to use any particular tool. Cooperative care, much like holistic grooming, is I have to take a look at what this dog is having problems with and how I can help this dog get on board with being part of this process with us. And that, my friends and colleagues, is a great goal. So cooperative care speaks more toward the goal. Holistic grooming, sometimes the goal gets muddied. Sometimes the goal becomes a little bit abstract. Sometimes we aren't necessarily thinking about a goal. We're just trying to be dog friendly. And dog friendly is okay. We're going to talk about that more in the next part. Like it's okay to be thinking about, oh, well, I don't want him to be afraid. But if we go beyond that, not only do I want him to not be afraid, I would like for this dog to actually cooperate with me, because grooming care and veterinary care and care at home is part of what this dog needs for their lifetime. Now, every coat type, every dog has some different grooming needs. My poodle customers have a lot more grooming needs than, say, my border collies at home. But they all have grooming needs, and they all have veterinary needs, and they all have needs that need to be taken care of at home. Right now, as I sit here, today is a rainy day, and my dogs have to get toweled off every time they come in the house from the yard. This is common, normal stuff that we can be thinking about making progress with. And that's why I really like the term cooperative care and thinking about it as a goal. Not a process, a goal. Because it's not a particular method. It could be done with a variety of techniques, including classical conditioning, operant conditioning, counter conditioning and desensitization, conditioned relaxation, and perception modification, and there are so many more. So holistic grooming isn't a particular method, it's a philosophy, and it means that we'll look at the whole dog and the whole situation while we try to find a solution, and it could be the very same process that we were using in cooperative care approach. Just that I think that sometimes holistic grooming, the idea becomes a little bit muddled. Like we're just thinking about minimizing fear, but we're not thinking about teaching them to actually be good for it. Minimizing fear is important, but we can also go beyond that. I want them to learn that, hey, by the way, here is how we can work together. Work together. Notice I said cooperative care, not obedience. It's not that I want the dog to just do what the thing was that I told them to do, but I'm willing to meet them part way. I'm willing to kind of take a look and say, you don't like having your head dried with this particular tool, and I am willing to continue to work on that, but in the meantime, find another tool that you're willing to work with. There's a little bit of give and take with cooperative care, and because you are working toward a goal, it's a little bit easier to see if it's working or not. So trainers, when you talk to groomers, you may hear holistic grooming, and I want you to think about that as cooperative care. Groomers, you may hear cooperative care, and I want you to think about it as holistic grooming. So what about some of the less scientific modalities that can get lumped in? You know what? I think that there's, especially with the term holistic grooming, I think sometimes there's stuff that gets lumped in that, like I said, some of us are never, ever going to buy into. However, looking at the whole dog is very scientific. It is definitely behavior that we are observing and we are trying to change. So if things like Reiki and essential oils are not your cup of tea, they could be being used by one of your peers, whether that's a trainer or a groomer. But then there are other things like massage and calming music for dogs and dog appeasing pheromone sprays that are pretty mainstream now that used to be viewed with skepticism. But I want you to keep the goal in mind. The goal, the dog cooperating with us. The dog who is willing to stand on the table, who shifts their weight a little bit when you need to lift a leg. They shift their weight in your favor, like, oh, that's the leg you need to lift? Okay. The dog who holds still. Calm, comfortable, and cooperative dogs are easier to groom, easier to take care of, easier for owners to take care of. And if we're looking at that as our goal, we need to look at the whole dog. The whole dog. So holistic or cooperative care, generally, I think they are about the same thing. I like the term cooperative care better only because I feel that it's a little bit more scientific and it has more to do with the goal. Because if we're just trying to help a dog be less fearful, we're not necessarily helping them be better. If you're enjoying this podcast, please remember to subscribe so that you don't miss any episodes and tell all of your friends. One of the ways that I find topics for this podcast is I scan some Facebook conversations. And this came up a couple times this week. It comes up once in a while, definitely came up a couple times this week. There were a few discussions about comforting a dog and whether or not that reinforces fear. You've heard this before, I'm sure. Comforting a dog reinforces fear. So I really want to start off with, what does the word reinforce really refer to? So when we see or observe a behavior staying the same or increasing, that behavior is being reinforced. It's a measure of behavior change. So reinforcement is something that increases or maintains a behavior. And if it doesn't, then it wasn't reinforcement. It's about the observation and how it changed the behavior in front of you. Now, increasing or maintaining a behavior is reinforcement. If you are comforting a dog who is frightened and the behavior is increasing or staying the same, you may be reinforcing. Or it may be having no effect because the behavior is based on something entirely different. Now, I want you to think about that because it's entirely based on how the dog feels about what's happening. Does the dog experience anything pleasant by doing the behavior they're doing? Does the dog make progress by doing the thing that they're doing? Does struggling sometimes result in breaking free? That would be progress. That would be very reinforcing. If that felt like I am now able to break free of the thing that I thought was scary. Is the dog trying to escape? Be thinking about the motivation for the behavior. Why is the dog doing it? What does the dog get out of it? And then think about, is the behavior increasing or staying the same? I'm going to give you an example. If a dog just wiggles around a little bit and that doesn't work for them, and then increases to wiggles around and uses teeth, and that suddenly makes you back off, that could be reinforcing the behavior. Oh, good. I use my teeth and now everything's better. So reinforcement happens in the world. It happens. It's a response to the behavior that we're seeing. Okay, reinforcement just happens, whether or not we are reinforcing or not. I want you to think about that as the individual's response and what they're getting from it. Now let's talk about fear, anxiety, panic, and frustrations, because that's usually where the conversation starts off with comforting a dog. These are reasons why the dog may continue to behave the way they're behaving. So I know that can sound a little bit vague, but fear, anxiety, panic, and frustration might be the reason why the dog is continuing to behave that way. First, I'll give you an example. A dog is pulling away from clippers and trying to get away. As an example, right? That's fear, anxiety, frustration, pain, panic, lots of reasons why they might be doing that. But that is part of the fight, flight, or freeze response. It's not really even necessarily a choice they're making to try to get you to back off, as much as it's the physical response to fear, pain, panic, anxiety, is to try to make it stop, to try to get away from it, or to just freeze and hope that it goes away. If we are working on a survival instinct, that's not necessarily the dog choosing to bite at you. I'm going to give some examples here because I think that fight, flight, or freeze is a little bit easier to understand if we relate to it in some human ways. I used to work at a haunted house, and I remember there was one woman walking through with her grandkids, and I scared her. Oh, I scared her so bad. And she took a swing at me and was instantly mortified that she had done that. Instantly, like I saw her face change as her arm withdrew. Like I had to block. She was serious. She took a swing. I scared the bejesus out of her. And I watched her face go from panic to, oh my God, I just tried to hit somebody. That is the fight response. Fight, flight, or freeze. Your body takes over if you are overwhelmed. And that is the response. For this particular woman, it was fight. Flight is when somebody runs into a wall, which we also used to get a lot of at the haunted house. Right now, as I record this, it's almost Halloween. So haunted house examples are great for fear. There are people who would just like, ah, and try to run, and they'd end up like kind of slamming into the person in front of them. That's the flight response. Startled, scared, flight response. Fight response. Hit, yell, scream. And then there's freeze. The freeze response when you are frightened by something. So I want you to think about the freeze response is when you startle somebody and suddenly they're like, ah, and they're just frozen. And our dogs are doing that too. So if something has brought them to the point where they're experiencing fight, flight, or freeze, if we stop and try to comfort them and calm them down, that's not going to reinforce the behavior. That's not going to increase the idea that I need to flee away from danger. That's not going to increase the idea that I need to fight this person. If we calm them down, if we're using this comforting to calm them down, we're going to make progress because it's about the behavior. And if you notice that the behavior increases with your attempts to calm them down, then that's when you have to reevaluate what you are doing to calm them down or comfort them. Because it's entirely about how the individual reacts or responds to what you do. But there are little nuggets of truth in the idea that you can reinforce fear. So let me tell you one of those. One example is when, let's say, an owner brings a dog in and the dog is already kind of scared about coming into the shop. I think we've all experienced this. Veterinarians definitely experience this too. Anybody who works with animals has probably seen this play out. The dog's already a little worried, and then the owner scoops him up in their arms and starts talking like this, and it's okay, it's gonna be all right, Sparky. Not calming. There's nothing calming about that. They're rapid fire petting, they're sounding really panicked. Everything about the way they speak is fast, right? That's not calming. So if we are trying to calm a dog, comfort a dog, console a dog, we have to be aware of, is this dog finding that relaxing or calming or soothing or comforting? If they are, then the only behavior you would be reinforcing is calm behavior. I know. Let me repeat that, huh? But wait, aren't we spoiling them if they're biting at us and then we go to calm them down or try to comfort them? It's not about spoiling, it's about the behavior I'm seeing I want less of. I want more of a different behavior. What if I can help you understand that you are not in danger so that your fight, flight, or freeze response doesn't kick in? Ideally, we do it before that response kicks in. How can I help you calm down? How can I help you remain calm? Ideally, we want to start with a dog who's calm. It's not always what we're given. Ideally, we want to start with a dog who's calm and try to maintain calm. If our actions are helping the dog be calm, we can assess that. We can observe that. If our actions are something the dog finds scary, for instance, petting. If you reach over to pet a dog's head or neck and they're afraid of that, then that's not going to be very comforting. That's not going to be calming, and it's not going to decrease the behavior that you were seeing because the dog is still probably frightened, frustrated, anxious, stressed out. If our approach isn't helping that dog be calmer, then we might be making it worse. So there's a little nugget of truth with though we can reinforce fear. But fear is an emotional state. It's not like reinforcing a sit. This is about an emotion. It's not a physical action. This dog is wrapped up in their own head and what their fears are. And that's part of what makes the grooming process a little different because we as groomers are doing scary, weird things. We do lots of stuff and things that are scary and weird with equipment that's unfamiliar and an environment that's distracting. And that's why a lot of trainers don't necessarily know what groomers need. So trainers, I love that you're here. Thank you for listening. Because a lot of trainers don't understand what groomers need because trainers are used to trying to work with dogs that aren't stressed, keeping them sub-threshold, below the point of stress. That's what sub-threshold means, below the point where they're stressed, while they're still calm, in their comfort zone. We want them to be comfortable as best we can, but sometimes the dog is already in fight, flight, or freeze. And if we can help them calm down, if something that you do seems comforting to that dog, then I'm going to say, yeah, we should try it. We should try it because we want to work at the baseline of a dog who is calm. That's just healthier for them, healthier for us. It's going to make the job a lot easier. And as you've heard before on the podcast, calm, comfortable, and cooperative is the goal that we're working toward. So if a dog is afraid and we think that we have a pretty good guess at what might comfort this dog, then I think we should. And I'm basing that on my own past experiences where if I make a good guess and comfort a dog, they calm down and we're able to try something else or try again. If they are unable to calm down, I need to try a different way to comfort that dog. But the idea that just comforting them would be bad, I think it's based on the idea that people who try to comfort their dogs incorrectly make it worse. But that's why we have to look at the behavior we're seeing. Watch what the behavior change is so that we can know if it's working or not. If you'd like more information, you can find me at Chrissy@happycritters.net, happycrittersdogtraining.com, or you can join the Facebook group Creating Great Grooming Dogs podcast or the Facebook page Creating Great Grooming Dogs. I really look forward to hearing from you.